it is obviously difficult to pick up a slot midway through, having made half the points last night and having to conclude them now tonight. But essentially, I suppose the point that I was making when we adjourned last night was that to allow discrimination in certain circumstances is appropriate, but that only exemptions should be dealt with in a spirit of accommodating religious liberty. And the problem that this issue we have with it in Ireland is as a direct consequence of the undue influence of the Catholic Church in the provision of essential state services, and a legacy issue with that in terms of hospital care, school care and so on. Everybody needs access to schools, everybody needs access to hospitals, and religious ethos of an organised religion or its believers should never be allowed to interfere with a citizen's right to health or a citizen's right to education. And that really is the starting point of this. I mean, for example, Savita Halappanavar's husband Praveen should never have been told in a Galway hospital that this is a Catholic country and that his wife wasn't entitled to a termination. It should have had nothing got to do with the provision of services in a state-funded hospital. Now, obviously, as we discussed last night, Section 37 exemptions have been given which have allowed the Catholic Church to discriminate in cases where they felt that an employee wasn't upholding the ethos of that school or that hospital. And in certain instances that is appropriate if it was an entirely Catholic-funded institution and that the job, if you like, was, for example, to teach the Catholic religion, they would have a basis for that. But in any other section or situation, they don't. So I suppose the point I'm making is that while welcoming the bill, that we are beginning to discuss it and that we are beginning to discuss the discrimination, it doesn't go far enough. And really what we should be saying is that educational and medical institutions which are funded by the state should be taken outside the remit of Section 37 altogether. I mean, these institutions have a wider role in society. They're funded by the taxpayer, and equal access should exist regardless of religious beliefs. There's no occupational reason in a hospital why only a person of faith can do a medical or administrative job. Similarly, there's no occupational reason in state schools, and it is linked to the provision of chaplains or spiritual advisors in those institutions, which should be a matter for the religions and not funded by the state. And I know the Minister is aware of the very good work done by Atheist Ireland in this regard, who've highlighted the case of institutes of technology which were established on an entirely secular model and have no religious functions, and yet we know hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' money is being used to fund Catholic chaplains in a number of these institutions, which is simply just not good enough. Now, I think the point in the bill about the prohibition of discrimination by landlords against rent supplement recipients is very, very welcome. But I think we'd have to say that while it will probably stop landlords putting up the no rent supplement applicant need apply, it does very little else in terms of preventing the discrimination against rent supplement recipients, and the ability for landlords to discriminate against them on an ongoing basis could obviously be done, but more discreetly, for want of a better word. And, you know, I think when we take it in the context of the fact that tenants' situation has been made incredibly more vulnerable by the government's fudging and mishandling of the rent debate of late, that it's quite a worrying vehicle, and I think you could be doing a lot more in that regard. I suppose the last issue I really want to address on this is why the bill isn't more comprehensive than we have it. I mean, it's actually quite a confusing, miscellaneous piece of legislation. When we talk about equality provisions, that is a recognition that equality really means treating different people differently. That is being equal. But why we haven't been all-encompassing in this provision, I mean, I note that the bill makes slight reference to retirement ages, making the point that it's not discriminatory to have different ages for different fixed-term contracts and so on. But it doesn't deal with the issue which is before the House at the moment of the abolition of compulsory or mandatory retirement, which is a far bigger issue for older citizens. And I think it's a bit mad that we have a committee in the House taking hearings yesterday from Age Action Ireland and other bodies trying to address this very important issue, and meanwhile we've a piece of legislation here before us that's talking about equality, that touches on retirement age but doesn't address that. I mean, that's completely bad planning, really, with regard to the House. And I mean, what's been sought there in Deputy Ferris's bill, and which is a matter which many older citizens feel quite strongly about, is the issue that really the correct text should be the elimination of the maximum age in employment contract, and that basically, you know, people could concede that if there needed to be a maximum age in a particular occupation, then obviously that could be legally justified, but in the normal course of events, for example, if it required a super level of fitness or physical criteria, that's obviously allowed. But to just have a contract which says you must have a compulsory retirement age at this, I think is something which for a long time now there's been calls to review. Now, that's not in any way pandering to this unfortunate trend in society where people have to work longer in order to secure a decent standard of living, but that's a slightly separate argument. And I really would like the Minister to address why the abolition of the compulsory or mandatory retirement age is not in this, and whether he will be open to including it, because I think it would be a far preferable way forward. And the last point, Ceann Comhairle, is really to echo some of the points made by Deputy McLaughlin last night in terms of the absence of rights and equality for disabled citizens. I think it is regrettable. I would like to see it more, and I suppose what I'm saying is that I am glad that this bill is here. But this is second stage, and I think we can make it incredibly better. I think we can make it better for the lesbian and gay, atheist teachers and so on by removing educational medical institutions out of it altogether. But I also think we can make it better for other citizens, older citizens, disabled citizens and other people who have an equal right to demand equality, and that we're maybe not giving them as much attention as we should.